Hari Om everyone, and welcome to Lalita-Sahasra-Nama. We will begin with the meditation verses and do the meditation at the conclusion of the session. Please relax completely in the knowledge that your innermost being is the Chitti Shakti, the energy of awareness, of consciousness, manifesting in the form of your emotions, your thoughts, your life, your experiences. And this Chitti Shakti is a boundless beauty, bliss, delight. So you can relax into that no matter what the outer circumstances. Sinduraruna vigraham trinayanam manikyamaulispurattaranayakashekaram smitamukhimapinavakshuruham panibhyamalipurnarattnachashakam raktotpalam bibhratim saumyam ratnagatastharaktcharanam dhyayet paramambikam dhyayet padmasanastham vikasitavadanam padmapatrayatakshim Hemabham pitavastram karakalitalasadhema padmam varangim sarvalankarayuktam satatamabhayadam bhaktanamram bhavanim Shrihi Vidyam Shantamurtim Sakalasuranutam Sarvasampatpradatrim Sakumkumavilepana Malikachumbikasturikam Samandahasite Kshanam Sasharachapapashankusham Asheshajanamohini Marunamalya Varam Japa Kusumabhasutam Japavidho Smaredambikam Arunam Karunatarangita-kshim Dritapashankushapushpabana-chapam Animadibhiravritam mayukhairahamityeva vibhavaye bhavani. Remember that the deity, the goddess Lalita, is inseparable from you. She is not something external to you. She is simply your own being in its highest aspect of clarity, of truth, of reality, in its real condition. She is Mahashakti, the great energy, the great capacity, that whereby phenomena, experiences, worlds, universes emerge from empty, open possibility. Energy is never lost, but always transforms into something new. Even modern science tells us that this particular universe we are in begins with a burst of energy, infinite energy, and that this same infinite energy which was present at the beginning takes the form of everything in this universe and is perpetually transforming into something new, but is never lost. So this Mahashakti, in some sense, is Lalita herself. But Mahashakti is also what we know as the Kundalini Shakti in our subtle body, which is the energy that rises through our being, and with its rising, or with her rising, refines our consciousness, refines our mind. Thus, when the Kundalini awakens and rises, our consciousness awakens from the slumber and becomes more and more aware, more and more vividly cognizant of higher truth, of deeper realities, rather than experiencing only the material world, which, yes, no doubt is there, But there are many, many more planes of existence, more subtle than this material world. And our mind begins to perceive these as the Kundalini rises. She is Maharati, the great delight. Rati has many meanings, from the root ram, to enjoy, to delight in. It also means the Shakti of Kamadeva, the god of love, the deity of love. Like Eros or Cupid in the Western pantheon, and Rati is his Shakti, is his energy, and she is Maharati, she is the great Rati. That means in her, all love, all desire comes to conclusion, comes to its completion. Thus, it is not an extinction of desire that brings Lalita to the forefront, but rather the completion of desire. Rather than desiring small things, when we realize our true nature to be the deity, then our being overflows with a delight that then brings all desires to completion. It is very subtle. It is an inner delight that no longer depends upon outer things. Of course, you still want coffee, and decaf Starbucks coffee is very tasty, but it is not that you are totally engrossed in that. It is not that you are totally dependent upon that, because within your own heart there is a fountain of delight that begins to flow, that begins to become active when you engage with Lalita, and when the Kundalini rises and you experience Mahabhoga, which means the great enjoyment. People often, through a misunderstanding, think that the spiritual life is about abstaining and renouncing. And yes, that is also very important, but it is a misunderstanding that we must abstain, and in the end we must look like skeletons. Only then we are genuinely spiritual, but that is not so. At least there are different paths, and in Sri Vidya, the path of Lalita, it is not like that. Enjoyment is integrated into the sadhana. Our sensual experiences are seen from a different viewpoint, from a different vantage point, in that we understand them to be the outer display of Chitti Shakti, of the energy of consciousness. We understand that the appreciation of beauty is in fact a celebration of Chitti Shakti, that the appreciation of love, of music, of the arts, of good food as well. Absolutely. She loves good food. Payasanna Priya. She loves kheer, especially with a little bit of cardamom, and what else is added into the kheer? Saffron and other tasty grapes, dried grapes have to be part of the kheer. So all this is not just food, and this is just necessary to eat and live, and the rest is just abstaining. No, in Sri Vidya, we consciously experience that enjoyment. We consciously experience taste. One of our more confidential texts states that we should place a sweet in our tongue, onto our tongue, and then to slowly taste every moment to moment, with total awareness, with total clarity, to taste how that experience unfolds. Or when we embrace a good friend who has come from afar, from a journey, then we should consciously experience the joy that wells up in us. And other examples are given. So Sri Vidya is not a path of abstaining and being like skeletons or like dried up people. It is really a path of enjoyment. Enjoyment without attachment. Enjoyment appreciating everything that happens as the energy of consciousness. It's very subtle, very, very subtle. And you have to taste the path more and more to understand what I have explained. She is Maheshwarya, the one who has the great sovereignty, the great freedom, the great lordship. She is not dependent or subject upon others. There are 6 types of qualities known as Aishwarya. These are sovereignty, not to be subject to others. Virya, courage. Renown. Everyone who comes to hear about Lalita intuitively feels it is something great, that it is not something ordinary. Auspiciousness or splendor, Shri, fortune, light. Wisdom, jnana, absolute wisdom, in fact. And detachment, not being entangled in experiences only, even though they occur. It is like waves occurring in the ocean, or it is like a wonderful change of the weather occurring. We have very interesting weather these days. In the morning it is very beautiful, lovely weather, and then by noon it turns into clouds. So sometimes I feel that this is because I interact with people from the UK so much. So your energy has come to Switzerland, and with that the weather from the UK. But she's not like that. She's like the blue sky always. She doesn't have UK weather. Then she is Mahavirya, the one of great energy, of great courage, of great power. Veera means a hero, a heroine. That her right leg is ready for her to get up and to help. She does not shy from fighting the states of confusion, the states of delusion, the demonic arrogance, conceit, pride, anger. She does not shy from that. She has the heroic enthusiasm to take them on. And thus, when we practice and engage with her deeply, we too become courageous. We become fearless. She is Mahabala, the one of great power. But it is not a power of someone foolish. Sometimes foolish people also become powerful. Yatha Raja Tatha Praja, Yatha Praja Tatha Raja. That sometimes the ruler corresponds to the nature of his or her subjects, and sometimes the subjects correspond to the ruler. So when the subjects are foolish, the ruler is foolish, and the other way as well. But she is Mahabuddhi. She is of great intelligence, of great insight. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Buddhirupena Samstita. The Devi who is present in all beings in the form of intelligence. Namastasye, 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 Namo Namaha. To her, homage. To her there is homage. To her, homage. And she is Mahasiddhi. She is of the greatest attainment, of the greatest accomplishment. We say there are two types of siddhi. One is the Laukika siddhi, the ordinary, mundane siddhi. The kind of siddhi like great perceptiveness, perhaps clairvoyance, knowing other people's minds or hearts, their emotions, their problems, being able to help them, or perhaps even knowing a little bit of the future, or different types of powers, but these are Laukika siddhis. Then there are also Lokottara siddhi, which is transcendent siddhi. Not ordinary siddhi, but superlative siddhi. And these are the siddhi that grants liberation, that has the capacity to liberate others and also oneself. There's a beautiful story, I'll tell you, of a great saint who lived in Rishikesh. His name was Mastaram Baba. I don't know if you have heard about him. Unfortunately, he was before our time. We never got the opportunity to meet him. But there was an American devotee of his. This is back in the 60s. And he was extremely devoted. And I believe stayed with him for many years. And then, towards the end of this devotee's life, I'm not sure what his ailment was. Perhaps it was cancer. I don't know. But there was some ailment. And towards the end of his life, the guru, and this was a real yogi, Mastaram Baba, the guru had the disciple sit in front of him on the ground, and the guru started doing a very special yogic kriya, a kind of practice related to prana, the life energy. And he went on and did this for about half an hour. And at the end of this practice, this devotee died at the guru's feet. And the head of the devotee was on the guru's feet when he had died at that moment. So this was a very beautiful, there's a small booklet about this process. So the guru in this case had the siddhi of liberating the disciple, you see. That is Mahasiddhi. She is Mahayogeshwareshwari. She is the queen of the great king of yoga, of the great yoga. There are different types of yoga. There is yoga which is more directed at our health, which is also important. Because if we're not healthy, it is difficult to progress in sadhana. If we are all the time worried about our back, how can we really practice very well? But then there is also yoga related to the life energy, the prana, what the Chinese call chi and the Japanese call ki. In India it was called prana. The very special types of prana vayus, energies that flow through our body, and the yogic practices, they help us to engage these prana vayus, these winds, to use them for growing spiritually. To, for example, to activate certain channels, nadis in our body, which are related to clarity. Because without clarity, we cannot meditate. So those of you who were present in the retreat, you remember we were talking about the position of the eyes, which is a very confidential practice. And this opens up certain nadis so that the pranas flow differently, which is why we experience clarity when we do these practices. So this is Mahayoga, not ordinary yoga. And the king of Mahayoga is, of course, Shiva. He is the great king of yoga. And she is his queen. Therefore, she's the queen of the king of the great yoga. She's also Mahatantra. The great scriptures known as the Tantras have emerged from her. There are many, many agamas, special texts that are quite confidential in nature and are given from guru to disciple, transmitted from guru to student rather than publicized. And these are known as the agamas, and another name for them is tantra. And there are in total, in fact, there are hundreds of tantras, but we say that there are 64 main tantras, and these have emerged from her. She is also Maha Mantra. Every tantra comes with a set of mantras and a set of yantras. So these three words, tantra, mantra and yantra, they are interlinked. So the Maha Mantra, she is the source of all the great mantras, and Mahayantra, she is the source of all the great yantras, especially the Shri Yantra, which now is covered by this beautiful flower, but you can see it behind the flower a little bit. And if you have the patience of sticking to this session, then gradually we will talk a little bit about the Shri Yantra and its qualities, how the different lines are drawn and what they mean. I'll give you one little hint. A real Shri Yantra is drawn by having a set of columns based on the 49 letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, 7 times 7. So the Sanskrit alphabet can be categorized differently, 52, 50, 49. And in this case, the 7 times 7, 49, is used. Thus, the Shri Yantra embodies all the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, which secretly represent our own subtle body. Thus, the Shri Yantra is actually our own subtle body. This is one little hint so that you see it is worth for you to stick to this session to find out more about it. She is Mahasana, the one who has the great seat. And again, this has many meanings. One, of course, is Lord Shiva, but another is that she resides in the different elements of nature, of Prakriti. These are her great seat, such as the 36 tattvas, ranging from earth, the 5 elements, to our faculties of perception, to the higher states and elements of nature, all the way up to Sadashiva. These are her seats. Thus, in other words, she is present in everything. This also refers to the 4 great seats or pitas, known as the Shakti pitas of Purnagiri, Kamarupa, Jalandhara and Odhyana. This is all very subtle and perhaps doesn't mean so much if you know nothing about it, but these 4 Shakti pitas, these seats of energy, seats of power, these are particular places in India from where these traditions related to the goddesses, related to the yantras have emerged, and whence they draw their power. They still exist today. Sometimes outwardly they are a little strange, but if you know how to perceive, if you have that sensitivity, you can feel the tremendous energy in these places. A tremendous power is still there. And this is because they are her seat, Mahasana. And she is Mahayaga Kramaradhya. She is worshipped through the procedure of the Mahayaga, the great sacrifice, the great fire sacrifice, and here the commentator explains beautifully. The great fire sacrifice is when we activate our awareness, our mindfulness to such an extent, with such clarity, that our vasanas, our habitual patterns, our ordinary structures of thinking, feeling, our ordinary emotions are consumed by the fire of consciousness, by the fire of our awareness. In the depth of meditation, when we enter such deep meditation, where such heat arises, where the mind is like on fire, where the subtle body is like on fire, that our vasanas, our limiting states, all that which makes us so limited, so greedy, so jealous, so proud, so conniving, all this is burnt up in that fire of our meditative practice. And that is the great Mahayaga. It's a beautiful explanation by the commentator. And she is worshipped through that procedure, not through anything else. Of course, there is the outer worship of the Sri Yantra. There are outer pujas, but the great puja is the inner puja. The great sacrifice is the inner sacrifice of meditative absorption. She is Mahabhairava Pujita. She is worshipped by the great Bhairava. Bhairava is explained in many different ways. One is that Bhairava means wrathful or fierceful. It is the form of Shiva that is standing in a ring of fire and is tremendously fierceful. But another different derivation of Bhairava is that it is that form of Shiva which protects and which is pleasing and delightful and which helps us discard ignorance. So there are different explanations of the word. In any case, Bhairava is Shiva. There is one of the greatest agamas ever revealed is known as the Vijnana Bhairava. It is the Bhairava of consciousness, the Bhairava of realization. And in that, 113 different upayas, different methods of how to practice meditation were revealed. Very powerful text. And Lalita is Maheshwara Mahakalpa Mahatandava Sakshini. She is witness to the great dance of the great Lord, that is Shiva, at the end of the Kalpa, at the end of the era. As you know, our world and our universe is always cyclical. So in the ancient Indian system, there is a cyclical time. And each era has a certain period, long period, but when it is finished, then it is said symbolically that Shiva begins to dance the Tandava dance. Very powerful dance that brings about the dissolution of the universe. And she is the witness to that. It's very beautiful that she is the Sakshini. That means she reclines, she relaxes. Chitti Shakti, the energy of consciousness, relaxes and witnesses that dissolution. And here I will give you an inner meaning. Each one of us will undergo the process of Tandava at the time when we die. And I can assure you, all of you are going to die. That's one thing I can assure you of. Not so sure about myself, but I'm sure you will. And I'm just joking, I also will. That is the great Tandava of our individual life. And if we can be like her, because we are her, if we can become the Sakshini relaxing into our being, when that dandava happens, then it means liberation. Then it means we will exit from this world meaningfully. If, however, we will be agitated, so attached to this body, to this mind, to these emotions, to this limited identity, that we begin to panic, it is not good. It means we will be drawn into those specific attachments. Someone has to tell you. If not me, who will tell you that? If we are attached at the time of death, we go where the attachment is. You see, it is like in a dream. There's not much control at that time. We are just drawn into that. So for example, if you are very attached to your house, if you've always lived in the same place, everything's so rigid, you're totally attached to it, you totally identify with it, then I'm sorry to tell you, at least for a while, you will turn into a ghost. It is not a ghost story, but it's true. You will turn into a kind of ghost for a while. And then, of course, your karma will continue and you will go somewhere else. But it is really like that. Even if you've done lots of mantra and lots of bhajans and lots of this and lots of that, if your mind is really totally identifying with your house, with your location, then you will turn into a ghost. Is that really what you want? That your life ends with a ghost story? Not really. So that is why we have to be the sakshi of that process. That is why we prepare throughout our life with enjoyment, don't forget, but we prepare throughout our life that we, at that moment, at that crucial moment, now the moment has arrived. That we can relax like she does and be the sakshi of that and just relax. Then it is meaningful. She's the great spouse of the great Lord of Love, Mahakamesha Mahishi. She is Maha Tripura Sundari. That is her main title, in fact. She is Maha Tripura Sundari, the beauty of all the three worlds. And here, of course, there are so many layers of meaning. The highest layer of meaning is that the three worlds are the knower, knowledge or the process of knowing, and the known. These are the three worlds, the triputi, the triad of conscious experience, and she is the supreme beauty of that triad. Maha Tripura Sundari. And here we will stop for today, because the next names, they refer to the 64 arts. And that is quite a complex subject. In ancient India, there was a tremendous emphasis on the arts. Music, playing musical instruments, dance, acting, painting, how to make jewelry, how to do magic, but not magic in the sense of some magic, but magic like David Copperfield. How to do magic tricks. This is one of the 64 arts. How to identify gemstones. How to use the power of astronomy and astrology. These are all, each of this is an art. And in total there are 64 arts. So I thought perhaps next time we could go through the 64 arts. It is amazing. And now you will be surprised. She is the 64 arts. She manifests in the form of the 64 arts. So when we practice these, how to make drinks, how to, I'm just giving you little hints, how to cook is one of the arts. How to interpret the sounds of birds. How to speak in foreign languages. And so on and so forth. Each of this is an art, and she manifests through these arts. Thus, when you learn the arts, you are actually engaging in her. It is a lifelong learning process. How to beautify your voice, how to use your voice to give joy to others, and so on. Thus you are engaging in her nature. And in ancient times, my dears, it was part of the tradition that people would learn these arts who practiced Sri Vidya. They would learn these arts step by step. The teachers would give them little homework that they should become experts at Sangita, they should become experts at music, they should become experts at this and that. So it's very, very beautiful tradition. So in the end, you have this sort of universal genius like Abhinavagupta in Kashmir and other places. You have these universal geniuses who mastered all the arts and at the same time realized their true nature as the oneness of Tripurasundari and Sadashiva, overflowing with bliss. It's very, very fascinating, actually. But of course, in today's time, if I gave all of you the homework to learn the 64 arts, it would be a little difficult. So maybe we can begin by, a few of the arts, 2 or 3 of them, and that's already a lot. But how to write WhatsApp messages is not one of them. Although one of the arts is how to express oneself properly. So eloquence. So, we could say in modern times, WhatsApp writing is also, sort of is a way of expressing oneself. So we could say that it is also valid as one of the 64 arts, or we could say it is a sub-art of one of the 64 arts. So if you qualify in that, then you've already mastered a sub-art of the 64 arts. Yes. Not so sure about watching Netflix. I can't really, because you see, one of the arts is that you learn how to perform, that you learn how to enact emotions, how to display emotions. But strangely, what I don't find is how to watch that. So Netflix doesn't count. I'm sorry. So now, my dears, let us go to the meditation. I'm joking, of course. By the way, one of the 64 arts is how to make good jokes. I don't know if I have mastered it, but I try. If I have failed, then I'm sorry. My teacher was not good enough. Although one of our gurus is the greatest comedian, or was the greatest comedian of all times, I would say, for us, and really mastered that beyond imagination. So, my dears, let us relax into joy. This is a path of joy, not a path of suffering. And like the Prasundari, become the witness, become the Sakshi. Relax. In the space of our heart, arising from within the very depths of our consciousness, is the ocean of nectar, Sudha Sindhu. The ocean of nectar is boundless in its expanse. Nectar is white, white like luminous, luminous white, like the color of the moon. But mixed in it are very gentle, tender rainbow lights. And in the center of the ocean of nectar is the jewel island, Manidvipa, the island of living gems, of living jewels. The most precious, wish-fulfilling jewels make up the substance of this island. And in the center of this is the forest of hibiscus trees, bearing the most beautiful red hibiscus flowers, wish-fulfilling flowers. And in the center of this, there is the most beautiful lake of lotuses, Mahapadmavanantaste. And in that, there is the palace of the Sri Chakra. It has 9 layers, 9 points that are crossed, and within each layer there are very specific goddesses known as the yoginis, and they embody all kinds of qualities: courage, fearlessness, beauty, delight, love, passion, playfulness. And as we reach each layer, we pay homage to these yoginis, and we continue inward into the center of the Sri Chakra. In the very center, upon the lap of Sadashiva, absolute existence or reality, dwells Tripura Sundari, her form is radiant like the morning sun. And her eyes exude waves of compassion. Karuna Tarangitakshi. And with these eyes of boundless compassion, but also wisdom, these eyes that know truth as it is, she glances upon us. And through this we are blessed to realize that we are looking upon ourselves. That she whom we see as someone separate in this meditation is in fact ourself, in its fullest potential. And with that recognition, the visualization dissolves into our heart, the infinite nectar ocean. Everything dissolves, and we rest in a state of relaxedness, in a state of unconditional spaciousness. It is important to not separate the divine from the mundane, not to have the visualization there and here we think everything is just ordinary. In fact, what we experience here through our faculties of experience, our senses, is also the display of that same Chitti Shakti. Thus, when you enjoy the Sri Vidya visualization, always remember not to separate it from your daily life, not to separate the beauty, the blissful feeling from your ordinary. Always to integrate both, to keep them together. Now, if there are any questions, please feel free.
Namaste, Acharya ji.
Namaste.
I was actually going to ask a question which you just answered a moment ago, so I don't need to anymore, about enjoyment. So I'll share something instead. So you talked about somebody liberating somebody, they died at their feet. Just wanted to share something that came to me when you were saying that. So my father's grandmother, so my great-grandmother, people say that when she was about to die, like she said, I'm going now, and nobody believed her. But she actually got people to do all her rites for her. She told people, and then she went.
Mm.
I don't know, it just reminded me of that's something that everyone's always been fascinated by. Like she even, whatever needs to be done, she got it all done, and then she went and...
Yes, I mean, some people, especially in the past, people had more intuition regarding such things. And as you know, especially in India, also in other regions of the world, there are people who just have these abilities inborn, even if she was not very consciously a spiritual practitioner, but I think she was, that she was a spiritual practitioner, but she felt that this is going to happen. And that means she was very advanced. It means she was very relaxed. Otherwise she would panic, isn't it?
Mm.
Because that is
Yes.
She would feel worried, or she would feel sad, and I haven't done this, I haven't done that, and what will happen to my children, right? So this is the attachment. But as you describe, it means she was very relaxed. That is the highest possible way. Thank you for sharing.
Acharya ji.
Yes, Trishaji.
I've got a question. When my understanding is that upon that moment in death, and then when one dies, if they've attained samadhi while they're alive, then they get what is known as Mahasamadhi. So effectively, they've realized while they're alive, and then they attain that sort of state of oneness, or they realize the self or the Atma upon death. Then does one have to have realized or attained Jivamukti while they are alive for them to get Mahasamadhi, or can someone just live a normal life and suddenly they die and they think of the Atma on the time of death and then they get realized? Like, especially when it comes to younger people as well, I always have that sort of question. Thank you, Vidyabhaskar.
Well, the latter description, sort of just living one's life and then somehow magically it happens. Well, I'm sure it has happened, but it's a little bit like the lottery, right? So we all want to win the Euro Millions, but somehow it strangely doesn't happen, but it does happen to some, isn't it? So, but I wouldn't take that approach, because you see, that's like saying, I don't want to work, I'm going to win the lottery instead, right? So then good luck with that. No, the best way is really to prepare, that one's entire life is a preparation for that moment, but not in a brooding way. I always joke, the idea is not that we are sort of necromantics, that we are constantly brooding about death, and that's not the idea, but rather that it is a conscious preparation. How could we describe that? It's not that, I'm going to die, not like that, but rather like when you prepare to go on holiday. You see, when you prepare to go on holiday to Crete, for instance. Crete is a tremendously beautiful island and not so far from here. And it's where the Greek gods were worshipped, which are the same as the Vedic gods. So essentially it is a Vedic place. So if you want to go to Crete on holiday, you need to prepare a little. You can't just go to the airport with your, what you're wearing. You need to prepare. So in that way, that is what we mean when we say that our whole life should be a preparation for that journey. It is like a preparation for a holiday, because when we make it to her realm, that is really even greater than Crete, you see? And once we reach there, it's free. Whereas if we go to Crete, we have to pay for the hotel and the cockroaches in the room, right? So, but in this case, there are no cockroaches and we don't have to pay for it. But that's why it's a beautiful preparation. But to come back to your question, Tusharji, there are two types of liberation. One is known as Jivan Mukti. That is what you have spoken about. That is liberation while living. That is when we are so established in the nature of consciousness, when it becomes absolutely clear that in fact there are no attachments left, and that inner joy is welling up all the time. That clarity, vast clarity, is always there. And we just simply know that there are no attachments left. And then that is called Jivan Mukti, right? That means, don't worry, that person is fine now. So no matter how they die, the scriptures say, even if they die, sort of in a, I think the description is surrounded by dogs or jackals. It doesn't matter, that is, they're liberated. Because what will happen is that the karmas fall away at the time of death, and then they are just the luminous absolute, which we are already. The other type of liberation is known as Krama Mukti. That is sequential liberation. So that is sort of for, that's the B plan. I like to call it the B plan. So if we have not attained the state of absolute non-attachment and the absolute recognition of our true nature of consciousness, if we have not attained that, but if we have practiced deeply, committedly, with great devotion, and also experience, for instance, a path like that of Sri Vidya, if we have really practiced and really deeply connected, then at the time of death, we are drawn up into the Urdhvagati, into her realm. So even though all these infinite worlds that we exist in are, ultimately they are illusory. They are like magically illusory worlds, like this one is as well. But the same way that this one is experienced as being very real, right? Right now, you're experiencing this as being very real, sometimes too real, right, to be true, too good to be true, and too bad to be true as well. In the same way, those realms that we go to when we have done a lot of good sadhana are also experienced as real, even though they are also not entirely real. I know this sounds tremendously complicated, but actually it's quite simple. That the same way this world is experienced as real, but actually is not, those worlds are experienced as real, and actually they are not. But the difference is this, that in those worlds, the higher realms, there is only good conditions. You don't have to work as an investment banker or financial consultant or as a doctor to earn your living. You don't have pains in your body like back pain and knee pain and all these pains. You don't have annoying relatives there. You don't have duties there. You don't have anything to do there but one thing, sadhana. So in those worlds, you continue to do your sadhana because that has been your great aspiration. And moreover, that's like the cookie on top, or that's like the cream on top of the icing. Do we say that? No. The cherry on top of the icing is that the gurus are also there. The great masters are there. And we receive teachings from them. You see, it really is like that. This is not just a fantasy. So even though, Tusharji, those realms are just as illusory as this one here, in those realms, we continue tremendous sadhana till we reach liberation. You understand? And under the best conditions, nothing is wrong there. You see, that is called Krama Mukti. So, that means if we don't make it to full mukti here, if we have connected to her deeply, 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 with real devotion, not just superficially, you see, not just the WhatsApp version of it. What I mean by that is, you see, the mala here and the WhatsApp here. You see, that's not Krama Mukti. That will be sort of, we'll get some blessings and then we will be back here. Or hopefully. Not that type. Real committed sadhana, real devotion, real clarity, real doing anushtans as well, doing retreats, real sadhana. That means Krama Mukti. So we are taken there, and then from there it is sort of just the upward growth. There is no falling back from there. Do you see that? You understand? Very good. So then maybe the last question. Welcome. Someone asked, what is the Mula Mantra of Sri Vidya? That, my dear, we cannot tell you in such a, sort of superficial context. That our Gurudev, Swami Omkarananda, from whom we received the Sri Vidya lineage, was very, very particular about the conditions, the purity, the sincerity required to receive these levels of mantras. So that we cannot tell you here. That has to be, sort of earned, and there has to be a real sincerity towards that goal. Yes? And then last question, someone says, how do the arts fit into our sadhana? Can they become an obstacle or enhance it? When the 64 arts, when they are experienced with joy and with devotion as a manifestation of the divine, as a manifestation of Devi, then they are just an enhancement. That means every activity becomes a spiritual activity, because the 64 arts are quite vast, in fact. So what I'm doing here, spiritual teaching, is one of the 64 arts. So if I do this as a manifestation and expression of Devi, it is a sadhana. Our Devikaji is a doctor. Being a doctor is one of the 64 arts. Healing others, knowing the minds of others, is actually one of the 64 arts. So when we engage in that with devotion, then it is a sadhana. then we realize this art is not just something I've learned at university. It's actually a manifestation of Tripura of Lalita. You see? And Tusharji is a financial person. Commerce is one of the 64 arts. So, how to do business, how to engage in business, but not cheating people, Tusharji. So, that is also one of the 64 arts. And when we engage in it in that way, it is a sadhana, right? That is why this Sri Vidya path is so tremendously rich and beautiful. All right? So let us finish here. I hope you stay and stick with this session, and wishing all of you the Devi's blessings. Feel her in your heart. She's always there as our own energy of consciousness. Have a wonderful evening, and Hari Om.